Hello friends, this is Wigs and Fluff with Barbara Wiley, and today I'm going to be talking to you about hair colors. I have 3 hair colors in the back here. I have my newest one, which is the Voltage, which is a hairstyle that I already had, but I got it in glazed vanilla, which I really like. This is the glazed vanilla. It's very platinum with some darker shades in it. Now I'm going to compare that with Biscuit. This is the crowd pleaser, but this is in Biscuit. And I want you to look at the color differences. The Biscuit has more golden highlights in it. And you see the difference? It has more sandy blonde in it than the Voltage here in glazed vanilla. If you can see, the one I have on is sandy blonde. This one here is the glazed vanilla. You can see it's completely different. You can see the white tones compared to all the gold and ash blonde tones in this sandy blonde wig. And you can see the Biscuit. The Biscuit has a little bit more of the sandy blonde in it than the glazed vanilla does. Now, here's another glazed vanilla. This is in the Trendsetter. This was the Trendsetter is a newer wig I got in glazed vanilla, but I really like the glazed vanilla. I really like the darks and lights in there. You can see it's pretty true to this one here. There was no color difference. So now I have on a sandy blonde wig. This is the Trendsetter in sandy blonde. Now this is an Eva Gabor Soft Romance in sandy blonde, and you can see that this is identical, just nearly identical to this wig here, to this sandy blonde. So this is the sandy blonde colors. This is so that you can see and judge for yourself which is sandy blonde. See, it's almost all golden with hardly any darks and lights in it, almost all golden blonde. Here is the Gabby, and this one is in golden blonde blends and light ash blonde blends. It's a little bit darker, but it's got the golden blonde blends in it. Not so much dark, but the golden with the light ash compared. This is a sandy blonde, which is mostly light ash. And you can see that this one's slightly darker. This is the Gabby with 24B22 is the color, 24B22. And it is the golden blonde with light ash blondes. Now, this one here is the Kinsey by Tony of Beverly Hills. This is iced champagne, and you can see that this is nearly identical. This is tiny bit darker. This one's tiny bit. But this one here is just nearly, iced champagne is nearly the same thing as a golden blonde, or a sandy blonde, rather. This is a sandy blonde right there. Okay, so sandy blondes versus glazed vanilla. You can see that very clearly. This is more white, more platinum, glazed vanilla. More white, more platinum with darker highlights. You can see that. Should be able to see that pretty well. This is sandy. This is more white. Here is the Crowd Pleaser in Biscuit. And you can see it's blending a little bit. You can see this has got the more golden highlights. The Biscuit has the more golden in it with a lot of the ash, the white blonde, with some sandy highlights, sandy blonde highlights. And you can see that. I thought it might be helpful to you to understand the difference between sandy blonde and the white blondes so that you know what you're getting. And so you won't be surprised. And say, whoa, that's not what I ordered, when in truth, this is exactly what you ordered. Now, this is that light sandy blonde that I have on right now. Okay, now today I have a story for you, and it's about a woman who became queen. She became queen. The king of the land was named Ahasuerus, King Ahasuerus. And he was kind of a jerk, to tell you the truth. Now, he and his wife got into a squabble because he wanted her to go and dance a very exotic dance in front of all of his friends. And she looked at him and she says, I'm not doing that. I'm a married woman. I'm not going to go out there and dance the hoochie coochie in front of all your friends. So instead, she said no. And she went back to the queen's chamber. Well, Ahasuerus got so mad, that he banished her from the kingdom. Banished his wife from the kingdom. Now, in those days, the Jews were living in this land, and they were not especially liked or welcomed by certain people. One of them was the king's second in command named Haman. Now, Haman was a bit of a jerk himself. He was an evil man, and he wanted to exterminate every single Jew. He wanted to exterminate them. And he came up with this plot that he was trying to involve the king in to exterminate the Jews. Now, meantime, Mordecai, who was raising Esther, it was her uncle. We don't know what happened to her parents. Something happened, an accident or something, and Mordecai raised his niece, Esther. He was a good man, and he raised her well. And he was talking to Esther, and he was telling her about what was going on, this insidious plot. Because you see, Mordecai was known in the court in those days, and he knew Haman, and he knew that Haman was plotting evil. So what happened is that one day, Esther was out on her back deck, and she was tending to her flowers and what have you, her plants that she had. And she looked up, and she noticed that the king's entourage was going by. And for some reason, it stopped right in front of her house. And the king was in the carriage, and he took a look at her. And she looked at him. And then the carriage moved on. But he was taken with her. He thought that she was very, very beautiful. But they had other business, and the king's carriage and entourage moved on. So a few weeks later, the king needed a new wife. And so he rounded up the most beautiful women in all of the land to come and parade before him so that he can take his choice. Well, it came down to about 10, and Esther was one of them. So Esther went home and told Mordecai, look, Mordecai, uncle, I don't want to be the queen. I don't want to be any part of this man. He's an evil and wicked man. I know what he did to his first wife. I know he kicked her out because she wouldn't dance the hoochie coochie in front of his friends. I don't want to be married to a man like that. And Mordecai sat her down and said, Esther, if you become queen, you can save all the Jews. All you have to do is tell the king, these are my people. And the king will not have anything to do with Haman's plan to exterminate us. And he said to Esther, who knows? You may have been called for such a time as this, Esther. So they sent the 10 finalists home to put on their best outfits, their most beautiful clothes and jewelry and necklaces and what have you. And she came back to the courts. The other girls were dressed in their finery. Of course, Esther and Mordecai didn't have much money, and all she had was a beautiful blue satin dress or something. And the rest of them were dressed in just this gorgeous stuff with jewelry just hanging off of them and everything. And they, one at a time, they paraded these women in front of the king. And he looked them up and he looked them down. And then they moved on. Another one came and he looked them up and he looked them down. And then they moved them on. And that's how he went about choosing his next wife. Love had nothing to do with it. He was just looking for the prettiest one. So they could probably go out and dance the hoochie coochie again. Who knows? So anyways, it turns out that in the end, Queen Esther won. She became queen. She became queen of the land. So what did she do? She listened to Mordecai, and she did what her uncle told her to do. Because her uncle told her, who knows, Esther, you may have been called for such a time as this. So what happened was Haman was still going on with his plot, and he had no idea what Esther's heritage was. Nobody knew, really. The king didn't know, and no one else knew that she was a Jew. So Haman goes on, and he tries to get the king's ear, and he pulls the king in to this plot to destroy all the Jews in the land. All the Jews. Well, Esther very bravely walks in to the king's court. Women did not do that. If you did, you would be off with your head. But Esther knew she had to do something very quick or her people would be killed. So she walked up and stood in the back and stared at the king. And they were already married, and the king was very well pleased with her. And he saw her standing in the back. And he said, "My queen, what is it that you require?" And she came forward and she said, "Oh, king, I just wanted to invite you for dinner, you and Mordecai, for dinner tonight in my rooms." And the king was very well pleased. And he said, "And who's going to cook?" And she said, "I am. I'm going to cook you a wonderful meal. You and Mordecai. You and Haman. So the king was very overjoyed by this. And he said, "Oh, I'm looking forward to it." So she left. She bowed to the king. She left. And she went to prepare the meal. And she prepared the meal, and they had their dinner. And then the next day in the court, she appeared again, and she looked at the king. And the king looked back at her, and he loved her. And he looked back at her, and he said, "What is it, my queen, that you require?" And she came forward, and she said, "Oh, king, I've just come to ask you again to come to my chambers, you and Mordecai, for another meal with me." And the king was overjoyed 2 nights in a row. Wow! He really liked it. And he said, "Will you be cooking again?" And she said, "Yes, my king, I will cook you another dinner." Well, he loved her cooking. So he was really crazy about this whole idea. So he was overjoyed and looking forward to it. So that night, she prepared another dinner. And then Mordecai was in there at that time, plotting with the king to exterminate the Jews. And then she came forward and she said, "King, there is one here who has been plotting to kill me. There is someone here between us that has been plotting to take the life of your queen." Well, King Ahasuerus was very upset. And he said, "Who is this monster? I'm going to put him to death. That's what I'm going to do. Nobody touches my queen." and you are so beautiful, nobody's going to touch you. And so she said, well, my king, I hate to tell you, but it's Haman. This man right here. He is the one that's been plotting against me because you see, king, I am I'm a Jewish woman. And Haman is trying to plot against the Jews and pull your highness into that plot to exterminate all the Jews, and that would be exterminating all my people, including me. Well, the king was furious with Haman. In the meantime, Haman had erected some what do you call those things? To hang people with, gallows, to hang people on. And so the king was so furious, he directed that Haman be put to death for plotting against Queen Esther's people. And he had Haman hung on the very gallows that he meant for Mordecai. And Mordecai just stood and watched as Haman was put to death on those very gallows. And Queen Esther's people were saved because she was called for such a time as this. And that's the story of Esther. And today they celebrate the Feast of Purim in Israel because it is a true story. I hope you like that story, and I hope you'll see me again. Oh, today is Sunday, and I hope you will come to church with me today. Today is Sunday. We need to read the Bible, pray, and go to church. Even if you go online, come to church. It will do you good. I'll see you later. Bye.